Yo, what's up, YouTube? Let me go through my notes real quick. See what I can hit it for today. I'm going to try and go into some kind of chronological order. So, take it back from the beginning. I'll say about January. I was doing my unconventional approaches towards tuning into what's going on with the collective consciousness, and it pointed me towards the Fed's official website and all the documents of the meetings they had, which I just took my finger to land on a random place, and it landed on the Great Depression. Now, I wouldn't expect anybody to follow me or believe that. Just me doing it, like, be like, oh wow, you're magic. But in my life, I've experienced so many astronomically crazy odds in my favor that I started digging a little bit more. And then all this new information, because I'm learning this all at the same time, some of it, there's so much of it coming out that I put that on the back burner. And here now, there's people that have been professionals or been through cycles for so long claiming that's what it's going to be. So I'm a little bit disappointed that I didn't make these videos a while back, but I was kind of so far ahead at the same time. So, in 29, the crash of 29 followed the Great Depression of the 30s. It had a profound impact on banks, and that led to their crashing. There were several factors that contributed to this crisis. So, stock market speculation. A lot of people in the 20s were just speculating the stocks that were going to do good and throwing money in it, and a lot of people were winning. And the correlation to now that reminds me of is like when we got the stimulus checks, people had all this extra money, and it seemed like no matter what you threw it at in the stock market, you were making money. So that correlates. See, in overproduction and underconsumption. The 20s saw a period of significant industrial expansion, which resulted in overproduction. However, wages did not rise at the same pace, leading to underconsumption. This created an imbalance in the economy and ultimately affected the banking sector. Well, I don't think we really overproduced anything this time, which is part of the problem. Unequal distribution of wealth. The wealth generated during the 20s was concentrated in the hands of a few wealthy individuals, while the majority of the population struggled with low wages and debt, which is basically the same now, or has been for a while for the middle class and lower. This disparity continued to weaken consumer purchasing power and economic stability. Another thing that ruins our purchasing power would be inflation. At that time, though, they had an agricultural crisis. That sector faced a severe crisis in the 20s, which declining prices and overproduction. So they had tons of supply, say oranges or apples, tons of them for fields and fields and fields, but people didn't really need them. So what they maybe would have got $1 for an apple or an orange, they had to drop the prices because you had more supply than demand. Instead, farmers were burdened with debt and struggled to repay loans, leading to widespread agricultural failures. So I'm sure it kind of reminds me, that just popped in my head, because history rhymes a little bit, it's not always exactly the same. But right now, where do you think there would be a situation like that, where people were burdened with debt, or they had to repay loans, but no one really needed their services, so to speak? It reminds me of commercial real estate. They have all these buildings and all these probably variable rate mortgages on those that they were able to pay when people were going there. But during the coronavirus and everybody had to stay home, they figured out, well, you don't really need to be using that anymore. I haven't heard much about it. This has been going on, I knew about this since January, probably even before, but even just knowing a little bit of that, like, oh wow, you're right. No one's probably going to those big skyscrapers anymore in Center City. What are they going to do with all that? And in this instance, well, like I said, failures, widespread failures, and that's probably exactly what's going on behind the scenes. So let's see, banking practices. Banks engaged in speculative investments in the stock market, making risky loans and operating with insufficient reserves. Additionally, there was a lack of regulation and oversight, allowing for unsound banking practices to continue unchecked. Seems like that's been going on as far as I can remember. I didn't really realize it when I was starting to consider myself an investor. That's like when you want the people in the banks to know this stuff, just so they can make sound investments, because they're lending money to people. That's their business. That's how they make their money. They usually lend money to people for mortgages and stuff like that. So they really have no clue about investing at all. And they're not really equipped to handle those assets, like if they foreclose on your house. There's no one in the bank that really knows how to go in and like flip it or make a profit off of it. They're hoping to get their profit off of you. So after going over that, which it didn't dawn on me until this, the one thing that I see does correlate is the farmers which even though right now we have something's going on with our food, most of it we probably don't even get in the US. So I know India, they stopped sending out their rice overseas and stuff. They kept it in their country, which they just recently changed like a week or two ago when Biden did something, I'm not sure, negotiated with them, but everybody was starting to contract. And that's what you're going to see, because when people go off that emotional reaction, that's usually what they do. They'll contract and then try to protect yourself, like a fight or flight mode. But that does correlate. Because I was trying to think what kind of matches right now, because everything else almost seems like it's the same. But I bet you didn't hear back in the 30s much about the farmers. Just like right now, you don't hear much about really anything at all with all the technology we have. At least back then, maybe it was harder to get word around, but nowadays, it's no excuse. But anyway, the combination of these factors led to a loss of confidence in the banking system and a subsequent run on the banks, which there's been 4 bank failures already, bigger than all the financial crisis together, the ones that failed. Just 4 of them. And I looked at the list. There's lists where there's times where like 20 banks failed, and you don't hear about that. Nothing was too crazy about them. Now these 4 banks failed, and it's a big deal. And more probably are failing that we don't know about. But as people rushed to withdraw their money, banks faced a liquidity crisis and were unable to meet the demands of their depositors. Many banks failed, causing a cascading effect throughout the financial system. Which I've been telling people, take money out little by little. It's just so you have some M2, actual physical money. And not just ones and zeros on a screen. Because there's only a certain amount of actual physical paper out there that they printed. Let's see. Where my other note says. It says some research and things I was doing, like the databases. It says online researches such as the Federal Reserve Economic Data, or FRED or FRED, provide access to a wide range of economic data, including historical financial indicators, interest rates, and economic activity. These databases can help you analyze and understand the economic conditions leading up to the crash, which is exactly what I was doing to begin with. I figured, let me go to the Fed website and just kind of gauge if they're even telling the truth, or if they're making it so vague that even if you go read the stuff there, it's like you're never going to deduce anything. And that's what led me to the 1920, 1930s transcripts, which I didn't read. Because if you do go to the transcript part, it is like primitive or archaic, old school, like just a bunch of text and you have to go read through, and it's from a while back. They have a lot of stuff. So that's it about what happened in the stock market crash in 29. People are saying it's like a depression, and it just makes sense in terms of even if you didn't have any of these indicators. In terms of the bigger picture and cycles, we've seen a couple of recessions, and we've seen a couple booms and busts in our lifetime that we may not have really even recognized, which I haven't, so I started getting into this one. But this is one everybody's asleep for, and this is like one of the ones that you're not really going to experience ever again. Like, I don't think I have, maybe my great grandma might know a little bit about it, but a lot of people alive probably don't have anyone they can go talk to alive right now that lived during the Great Depression and experienced it. And that's like the cool thing about it too. It's like we can learn as much as we can, but even then you can only be prepared as much as you can. You can't ever exactly know what's going to happen when you go into battle like that. And it kind of brings us together too. It's like, okay, maybe some of the older people or professionals have been through so many recessions, they can close their eyes and know what to invest in and know the best practices. But no one's really been through many depressions, so it's like you kind of know some things you can do to protect your ass, but we're all going through it together at the same time. So even though I was leagues ahead, and there's people leagues ahead in terms of knowing the information, which can help you prepare. And the universe or creation itself gives you those opportunities if you're paying attention. But for the people who aren't paying attention, that's why you have the crazy remembrances like the dates or whatever. They give it like a Black Tuesday or Monday, and like how dark of a day it was because all the emotion and sadness and despair. Not every single person felt that, because I'm sure some of them were better off than others. That's the whole point. With the emotion behind it and all, and you can make it all remember how crappy the Great Depression was. We still don't even have that emotionally ingrained in us enough to want to look out for things like this. And that's why the cycles are so cool, because you really, especially with something with economics, that's like, wow, economy is like a human thing. And you needed to survive, and people were always worrying about money. It's like, even with that, how we artificially created that for our own existence, with nature, it's like built in that you have to stay in tune and conscious of what's going on around you, especially if you want to evolve.